Welcome to Something Rhymes with Purple, the wordy podcast for logophiles and anyone really who has some kind of passion for language. With me, Susie Dent, and
Gyles Brandreth. I have to say, Susie, I've come to your home again, but you're looking wrecked.
I am.
Have you not had any sleep?
No, it's a recurring theme, isn't it? Maybe we should do a whole podcast on the language of sleep.
Oh, that's a
Landed
great
nod,
idea.
40 winks.
Oh.
Yeah, and that might just send me off.
Is this because you've been out at the boozer?
I haven't been out at the boozer. I wish that was my excuse. No, I've just been working too hard.
Are you a drinker? Do you drink alcohol?
I do drink alcohol. And
how much do you drink?
I love alcohol.
How many units? Do you count it in units?
Do you know, I went for 3 years without any alcohol whatsoever. And then one evening up in Media City, after a long day of countdown, everyone was sitting around having some fantastic red wine, and I just thought, sod it. And I had a delicious glass of red wine, and I haven't stopped. But I don't drink a lot. I probably have 3 a week.
Oh, you don't drink every night? Then?
I don't drink every night, no.
Fine, that's
no.
good.
But when I do, I really, really enjoy it. And I've discovered the best cocktail ever called a gin fizz for special occasions only. Gin, elderflower cordial, and prosecco. Oh, it's amazing. So,
it's amazing
that's my tip.
how gin has become fashionable, because it used to be the drink for the working poor.
We need to talk about that. Yeah, the Gin Act of 1736. It was drunk for a penny, dead drunk for two, because it killed off so many people.
Gin used to kill, and now it's the chic thing. They have gin tastings. People all get together. And
distilleries everywhere. You know, it comes from juniper. Well, it comes from a Dutch word, Geneva, which meant juniper, because, of course, it's made from juniper berries. But because it sounded a bit like Geneva, the sort of gin bit came into English with that pronunciation, and that's where it came from. But in the capital alone, by the 1730s, gin was public vice number one, and there were 7,000 outlets for what was called the cursed vice.
Was it very cheap then? Was that the point?
It was really cheap, very cheap to make at home. It seriously was. There were lots of paintings that you will find with people who apparently are sort of committing all sorts of acts of debauchery.
Gin Alley? Was that a real place?
Gin Alley. There's Gin Alley.
I mean, was it a place, or was that just a turn of phrase for someone?
Actually, I really don't know. Let's have a look.
I think of an artist like Hogarth doing pictures of
exactly
dissolute people in Gin Alley.
Exactly.
The poorest of
lots
the poor.
Lots of posters.
Out of
public
their minds.
warnings. And there were lots of euphemisms for it as well, some of which were quite playful, like Strip Me Naked, which sounds like a modern cocktail. But actually, that goes back centuries.
Strip Me Naked. And what is it?
Gin.
And
mother's milk.
It's like mother's milk to me. The gin's like mother's milk to me.
Sweet stuff, tiger's milk, Tittery, Royal Bob.
Tittery, Royal Bob.
Mother's ruin.
I remember gin, Mother's Ruin, because in fact it was Mother's Ruin, wasn't it?
Oh, well, absolutely was. I'm looking at Ginali now. That's the Oxford English Dictionary that you can hear at my fingertips. It's not actually in the OED, but leave that one with me. I'll have a look while we're talking. Yeah.
I gave up drinking about 20 years ago. I gave up drinking in order, when I'd been an MP, I put on about a stone, if not more. And when I lost my seat, I thought I'll regain my figure. And I thought, to help me do this, I won't drink. Because the House of Commons, in my day, they were all-night sittings.
Of course.
And it went on anyway till 10 o'clock on an ordinary night, and then often right through the night. And you ended up sitting in the bars, having a drink, waiting to vote.
Yeah.
So I decided I'm going to give up. And I gave up completely overnight. I said, no more drink in order to lose weight. I lost the weight. And then I thought, I've lost the weight. Now I'll have a drink. And I had a glass of wine. And, I had a migraine, a terrible migraine. I thought I'd stop that, wait a few more weeks, have another glass of wine. This time, didn't have just a migraine, but dizzy spells, had to lie down.
A friend of mine had exactly the same thing. I was quite lucky that after a period of abstention, I was all right. Well, or unlucky, depending really.
I clearly wasn't. So I went to the doctor. I said, these migraine. And he said, well, you could try organic wine. And I thought, I'm not going to bother. And so I gave it up, and I do not miss it. At first, I used to miss it. I never drank during the day, but I used to miss it at 6 o'clock. It was that sort of permission to, it's the end of the day. Quaff-tide.
6 o'clock.
That's what it's called.
Yeah.
Quaff-tide. Lovely word. But now I don't even miss it then.
No.
I do have little treats. I have a little elderflower cordial, and I indulge myself. My wife, very sweetly, imports from France some fruit juices that are nectars that are actually crushed fruits.
Nice.
So I have a strawberry nectar that is simply crushed strawberries and raspberry and peach juice. So I have those as little treats. So I look forward to those. So I have a little veggie sausage and a little raspberry nectar.
You know how to live.
Yeah, it's quite exciting. And then we turn on Naked Attraction and the night begins. Hey!
Yeah, exactly. We need to talk drink though, because linguistically there's just so much to say, really.
Well, where do we begin? In the pub?
Well, in the pub. Let's begin in the pub. Shall I give you a few names for the pub over the centuries?
Yes.
I hat tip here to Jonathan Green, who is Mr. Slang in the UK, and he's done these incredible timelines of particular themes: money, sex, drugs, certain parts of the anatomy, which, of course, they just produce or generate so many slang terms. And so hat tip to him, because he helped me with these. In the 1600s, the pub was Fuddlecap's Hall, or the Tippling Booth.
Hold on. You say the pub. That's short for a public house, isn't it?
It is.
And what is a public house? Why was it called a public house?
A public house because, the first pubs were kind of set up by monks, actually. They made a huge amount of money from the brewing of ale. And any monastery that did this would hang often a sort of, probably not a sprig of juniper berries, but they would hang greenery outside the monastery. Maybe it was hops.
To show, I don't know.
To show, yeah. So you will have the green man, for example. That's one of the earliest things that goes back to the idea, or the bush. And then, anyone in a village who decided to brew at home would do the same thing. Would hang some greenery outside as
so give me those,
come in.
Give those early names again.
Fuddlecap's Hall.
Fuddlecap's Hall, because even then people got befuddled.
You get befuddled.
That's why I gave up alcohol. I couldn't bear being befuddled. Anyway, Fuddlecap's Hall, go on.
The Mug House, the Tub of Blood.
The Mug House, is this because people took advantage of you? You became a mug.
Do you know, I don't know. Or it could just be they had a mug of beer. You could look at it both ways. The Lushington Crib, I love that.
The Lushington Crib.
The Lushington Crib.
There was one before I quite liked,
the Tub of Blood. Now, I would have associated that with the theatre, but I'm not. Again, I'm not quite sure why. Shika Shop, Stagger Juicery.
Shika Shop.
Yeah.
Shika Shop. How do you spell Shika Shop?
Shika Shop is Shicker.
Shika Shop.
Shika goes back to the Yiddish shika, meaning to be drunk, simply.
Shika. He was shika. He was drunk.
Shika. Then the person dispensing the drinks could be the ale draper, the cove of the ken.
I love that.
The governor, obviously, mine host, the sud slinger.
The sud slinger. Is that because with beer at the top, the foam looks like suds, soap suds?
Yeah, we talked about barmy before, haven't we? Barmy being the foam at the top of a cup of beer or a glass of beer.
No.
It's a brewing term. You'll find it in
As
tea
in,
making.
he was a bit balmy.
He was a bit balmy. He's frothy at the mouth, or just a bit frothy in the head.
Oh.
Yeah. Groggist, brother of the bung. Agreed. There's so many, and there are a few.
No, I'm loving them. Groggy.
Groggy. Okay, so grog goes back to Admiral Vernon. Admiral Vernon was a hugely successful naval commander who actually inspired the Portobello Road, the name of the Portobello Road and Portobello Market, because of a famous victory at Portobello. So George Washington's brother also served under him and was so impressed with him.
He's an American general.
No, he was British.
And of course, George Washington was British originally.
Exactly. I think it was Lawrence Washington served under him, came back to his family home in America and renamed, I can't remember what it was called originally, some very deeply American name, but he renamed it Mount Vernon, which is, of course, where George Washington lived out his life. Anyway, grog. Admiral Vernon used to wear a really heavy coat made of what was called grogram cloth, which is this really thick coat that kept him warm on the high seas. And he became slightly unpopular because he ordered the sailors' rations of rum to be diluted with water, not to prevent scurvy, just because he thought they were drinking too much. And as a result, he became known as Old Grog because of his grogram coat. And it was said with a bit of a snarl, Old Grog, who had watered down their rations. And then grog eventually lost its moorings and became a byword for alcohol.
And in a sense, also a byword for the rations. My grog.
My grog, yes, that's true. My grog of rum. Where were we?
We're on more of your... I'm loving these
groggy.
old words for...
Hair of the dog? Do you want to know where that comes from?
Hair of the dog. This is a drink you take as it were to get over your hangover.
Yes. So hair of the dog goes back to a belief that persisted for many centuries, that if you were bitten by a dog, you could grab the offending animal, pluck a hair from it, put it in a poultice and put it over your bite, and the wound, it was thought, would heal a lot more quickly. And so the idea was, I mean, difficult as it must have been to catch the animal, the idea was that a bit of what did you harm would actually do you some good, and that was transferred over to alcohol then. Oh. Hair of the dog.
So hair of the dog is a good one. That's a cure for... Have you ever been drunk?
Oh, yes.
Really?
Of course. Haven't we all?
No.
You've never been drunk?
No.
Gyles Brandreth. Is that the honest answer?
No, I don't think I've ever been drunk. What's it like?
What?
Being
Being
drunk? Can you remember? I
do
should add, she may be modifying what she's saying because we're recording this at Susie's home, and one of her daughters has just slipped back into the house with, I hope, some bags of mystery, which, as you know, is a phrase for sausages. So her mother now, having a teenage daughter...
I've never been drunk in my entire life.
...is now saying she's never been drunk in her entire life because Lucy is listening. But the morning after clearly is bad. It's not nice.
No.
I've seen people acting like the morning after, and they lift their heads with difficulty from the... And clearly, ooh, the head feels terrible. That's when you take the hair of the dog.
Very odd hangover recipes, apart from the hair of the dog, actually, which is another remedy involved mixing crab's eyes in wine or vinegar and knocking it back.
Crab's eyes
Yes.
in wine or vinegar, and you knock it back.
You knock it back. I've also got some great words for you. Actually, I might save some of these for my trio at the end. But I'll give you one: a sneck lifter. I think it's a pub called a sneck lifter, actually. Sneck lifter is someone who peers into a pub in the hope of seeking a friend who will buy them a drink.
Oh, that's nice.
They lift a sneck as the door latch. So they lift the door latch, peer in. Is there anyone there who might buy me a drink? And then they'll go in.
Are pub names very old? I used to write for a double act called Hinge and Bracket. Dr. Evadne Hinge and Dame Hilda Bracket. They were a drag act.
Yeah, no, I remember Hinge and Bracket.
They played two elderly ladies, and they were two delightful people, Patrick Fife and George Logan. Patrick's no longer with us. George, I'm happy to say, is alive and well. And they were very funny people. And I scripted a series, or several series, we did for TV called Dear Ladies. Mm-hmm. And Patrick was always inventing wonderful names for the local pubs, Stacked and Trestle, which was the imaginary village that they lived in. And I think he called the local pub the Goat in Spats.
Oh,
and
I like that.
I think as a result of our programme, Dear Ladies, real pubs began giving themselves amusing names rather like that.
Slug and lettuce and that kind of thing.
Yeah. The Goat in Spats, you can picture it. What do pub names go back to? How old are they?
Well, as we've established, I mean, ale has been with us for a very, very long time.
And people drank ale, of course, because the water wasn't very good.
That's absolutely
right. The water was dangerous, whereas ale was safe.
Small beer was weak beer that often kids would drink. It was watered down beer.
Oh, so when you say something, it's small beer, it relates to beer that had been watered down.
Yeah.
So meaning it's not as strong as... So you give a child...
it's a bit insignificant.
Small beer.
Is the idea. Yes. So, oh gosh, there's so many. I mean, there's been loads of books written about pub names, but The Bag of Nails is one of my favourites because that was probably originally the Bacchanals. And we all know about Bacchanalian rites where people would drink to excess. And
we don't all know about
that,
but Bacchanalian...
Bacchus was the Greek
god of drinking.
Of drinking.
And we see him as an overweight person in a sort of nappy holding a huge bunch of grapes. Is that right? That's Bacchus for you.
That's Bacchus.
He gave rise to Bacchanalian adventures, and the Bag of Nails is a Bacchanalians.
That's what we think it was. Yeah.
How wonderful.
The Elephant and Castle goes back to, the district in London, the Borough of London. That goes back to a pub that was called the Elephant of Castle. People think it's got something to do with Eleanor of Castile. Yeah. But we think actually it goes back to a livery company that used to have its premises on the site. And they were cutlers, basically. So they were the worshipful company of cutlers. And on their coat of arms, they had cutlery. And they also had an elephant because a lot of the handles for the cutlery was made of ivory. So we think that's where the elephant, and there was a castle on the top with that as a howdah, really. So that's where we think Elephant and Castle comes from.
And I assume that these pub signs, the origin of them is because it's before the time of universal literacy.
The checkers.
Yes.
Romans hung a sign of a checkered bar outside a drinking establishment, but also in medieval days, pubs and pub landlords often doubled up as financiers, and they would count their money on a checkered tablecloth or a checked tablecloth. So a checkers was a sign that this was a money lender or money establishment as well as a pub. The Chancellor of the Exchequer goes back to that same checkered tablecloth on which the royal money checkers and money counters would sort of move money around in order to calculate it.
So you could go into your pub, you could borrow the money or get the money and then pay for the booze.
Yeah.
Susie, I must make a confession to you. You know, you very sweetly sent me a text saying what we're going to talk about today, or suggesting it, because you only make suggestions, and I misread it. Because when I went back and said yippee, I thought you'd said let's talk about puns. You said let's talk about pubs.
Yeah.
And I know nothing about pubs, which is why I've been very quiet this week. But I've come with my favourite puns.
Okay.
Keep getting your wires crossed, and you'll end up with a mesh. Get it?
Yeah.
Yay! I used to be... Oh, no, I won't do that one. He was a loafer till he went on a sandwich course. Now he's the breadwinner. People who indulge in wordplay certainly get up to semantics.
I like that
You
one.
like that one, I think. That's good, good. Prayer of the confused cobbler. May my soul be healed.
Oh,
Clever, isn't it?
we need to devote a whole episode to
We'll
this.
have a whole, because I've got hundreds of puns ready for today, and Kelly,
I've let you down. We
they
haven't
are
even...
surplus to requirements.
So, yes.
Has
that's
anyone
very
written to
true.
us this week?
Yes, they have. Emma has written in to say, hello, do you have any idea how breadbasket became slang for stomach? My colleague's surprised. I've never heard of it, and I can't find much about it.
Breadbasket. You mean
Breadbasket.
like a paunch?
I'm not sure it's actual paunch. I think it's quite a sort of fit-looking, rippled stomach.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I think.
I like to feel I'm a bit buff. Oh, no.
Silence.
I'm sorry. Carry on.
So general stomach area, just because obviously that's where the bread goes. The answer is I'm not actually sure, and I'm not sure the Oxford English Dictionary knows either. So
But this
it's
is
a really
very
rubbish
interesting.
question.
The reason for getting in touch with us at Purple at Something Else is because Susie Dent is the world's leading lexicographer and has
doesn't
all
know
the
the
answers.
answer.
But she doesn't appear to know the answer. But that's quite satisfying
know the answer.
that people are actually out there who know more than you do.
Well, I suppose what it shows is that, you know, the kind of linguistic detective work goes on, and it always does go on. And there are so many really frustrating examples of fantastic words that you can look up and it will say origin unknown.
In your show, you're still touring your show, aren't
Yes.
you? Remind me what it's called.
The Secret Life of Words.
The Secret Life of Words. Are people allowed to ask questions?
Oh, yes, I have a word surgery at the end.
And what is the word what is the question that comes up most often?
Okay. I have strange questions about Jimmy Carr quite often, but the one about English that I'm asked most often is, why do inflammable and flammable mean the same thing?
And tell us the answer.
This is very nerdy, but it's the only sort of example in current English of in used as an intensifier, not as a negator. So in normally cancels out.
Excuse me, you lost us all just there with that phrase.
So normally you think of in as being the negative of the adjective that comes
Like
out of it. So
ingratitude.
inept.
Yeah.
Yes, ingratitude, inactive.
Inaccessible.
Exactly. But in this case, in is used as an intensifier. So inflammable means highly flammable. But because people were mistaking it to mean not flammable, i.e. you can have this duvet near naked flames and nothing serious will happen, companies now say flammable or highly flammable. And inflammable's pretty much gone away.
So the use of in there is like an intense, which means more tense.
Sort of, yes. That's not quite a direct line there, but it's a sensitive thing.
Insufferable doesn't mean not sufferable. It means insufferable.
No, it does mean not sufferable, that one. But intense is a good example.
Good. Intense is a good example. Insufferable. This shows you that we're just real people doing this. We don't know all the answers.
We are winging it.
Inflammable
We are
and
really
flammable
winging it.
is the most popular question.
Well, it's one of the most popular. Then I get asked, can you be gruntled?
Can you?
Can you be? Well, we're gonna devote an entire program to what word nerds call orphaned negatives.
Orphan negatives.
Now, there's a juicy
There's
trailer for
always
you.
something to look forward to. You still haven't been to, because you're doing your show in the sort of theatres I'm doing my show.
Yeah.
You still haven't been to see my show. My tour ends at the end of July, but I have been persuaded to return
extend
next year.
it.
Well, I'm postponing it till next year. So next year, come to London. I'm at the Cadogan Hall
In London, excellent.
on the 9th of May next year. I know that's a date in my diary. I don't know what day of the week it is, but come to that one.
I'd love to.
Because it's a big theatre.
You are indefatigable.
And there,
Seriously, you never stop.
now, is there a word?
You're like Jimmy.
Defatigable.
There is a word fatigable, meaning tired or able to be tired. Yes.
Okay,
When I say-
it's time now for your trio of words. Every week, if you're new to our oh, the post is arriving. Is
I've
that
got a very loud letterbox.
or is that a little signal from the post person?
What, saying, let me in?
Because I haven't
You've
seen any letters
talked
coming through.
enough.
He
No,
just saw the letterbox rattled, and then nothing came through. He's just showing
Yeah,
you
I
he's in the
arranged
street.
this. Whenever you were going to talk about your tour, I arranged for a little... Yeah, no, I didn't.
What's
Okay.
Susie's trio for this week?
Right. The first, of course, pub-related, shot clog.
Shot, SHOTCLOG.
Yes. The pub companion who you only put up with because they're buying the next round.
Oh, he's a shot.
Centuries old, that one.
He's a shot
He's a
clog.
shock. He's a bit of an obstruction, but we'll put up with him because he's paying.
How awful.
Now, you're not one of these, but I'm one. And Paul and Lawrence, who are with us, are also. We are Tosspots. Because the original Tosspots were simply drinkers who tossed back their bottle of beer and then usually asked for another one. So we're not, they were kind of habitual drinkers.
But
Maybe
the
we didn't
idea
go that
of is
far.
you're tossing it off, is it?
Exactly.
If you
Well,
pardon the
so to
phrase.
speak.
But you're tossing off your drink.
Yes. So call someone a tosspot is not actually as rude as you might think. Tosser is slightly different.
Oh, tell us the difference between
Well-
tosspot and tosser.
Tosser is all about masturbating and tosspot is all about drinking.
This is the charm of Something
Tell it
Rhymes
as
with
it is.
Purple. We tell it as it is. What's the next one?
The third one is the friend who always turns up whenever they hear a cork popping or a beer can opening, and that is a lick spigot.
Lick spigot
Yeah.
as opposed to lick spittle.
Oh yes, lick spittle's another good one. We should mention that in the
What,
political episode.
what is a lick spittle?
A lick spittle is somebody who just, it's a bit like a fart catcher that we mentioned in our politics
Oh, you lick
episode.
up somebody else's
Yeah,
spittle.
horrible.
You're so admiring them. Oh, their very spittle is attractive. Let me lick your spittle. That's a lick spittle.
Gross. That's really, really old though.
This is
lick
a lick.
spigot. One who licks the spigot. This is 1600, so 1599. A contemptuous name for a tapster or drawer. So it can be applied to a publican, but most often somebody who always turns up when there's a smell of alcohol around.
Ah.
And we haven't even mentioned cock a hoop.
Cock a hoop. Well, look, I'm feeling cock a hoop now. Let's end on cock a hoop.
Cock a hoop goes back apparently to setting the cock on the hoop, which is apparently to turn on the tap and let the liquor flow. And the result is you are cock a hoop.
Well, I'm cock a hoop. I have learnt so much again. I love being with you, Susie Dent. You are amazing. The amount you know, the fount of wisdom that is in there is extraordinary. So really, if you have enjoyed the podcast today as much as I have, and you're feeling cock-a-hoop like me, raise a glass and review us or rate us to help spread the word. If you've got a reviewing or rating mechanism on your podcast thing, if not, just spread the word. And if you've got a question you'd like to answer or you'd just like to get in touch, you can email us at purple@something else, that's something without a G, something else, all one word, .com.
Can I just mention the origin of intoxicating?
Oh, I'd love that.
Toxic is something poisonous. It goes back to the poison that was put on arrows of archers centuries ago. So toxophily obviously goes back as well to the poison that was on the tip of the arrow. It's a deadly, deadly weapon. And the result was that the victim would be intoxicated, would be poisoned. And of course, alcohol is a poison. And it got transferred over to the boozy kind.
Wow, you live and learn. Something Rhymes with Purple is a Something Else production produced by Paul Smith with additional production from Russell Finch, Lawrence Bassett, Steve Ackerman,
And Gully!
And Gully!